Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Healthcare Advocacy Podcast. Today, I'm very excited to talk with Lisa from Lisa Lou Fitness, and just to hear her story and to learn and understand what she does and how she impacts healthcare and healthcare advocacy. So, welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christine, for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. So, why don't we begin today by telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Okay, awesome. So, first and foremost, I am a wife and a mother of three. Been married almost 23 years, and I have three girls. And I'm the owner and founder of Lisa Lou Fitness LLC. And my company is completely dedicated to women's health. I deal with women. My heart is for women. And I tell people a lot of time, my heart is actually for the entire family, but my catalyst is the woman, right? Because as the matriarchs, we're just often the hub of, we do the grocery shopping oftentimes, and we, prepare the meals. And because of that, I have such a heart for women's health. And our whole mission is to really help women create a better legacy than what was left to them, because we're always waiting for that proverbial other shoe to drop. My mom had this, my dad had this, my uncle ended up with this, and I'm next. It's just my lot in life. I just need to accept it, right? So I see this, clients come to me sick, and maybe it's autoimmunity or some kind of chronic condition, diabetes, obesity, whatever it is. And of course, they've jumped from thing to thing and tried everything, but they're not in it for the long game. And so my mission is, you work with me, you're in it for the long game. We are not a quick fix. This is about helping understand your body, the root cause of where you are in the first place. And our bodies are always talking to us. How do we get in tune with those signals? My passion for what I do really, I can track my journey back to my teens. Super active, dance line, cheerleader, very, very active as a teen. But I was diagnosed with PCOS after dealing with tons of huge, very, very painful ovarian cysts, and just all kinds of issues like that. And I was hypoglycemic. Just my eating was just terrible. Very active, but I didn't know a thing about nutrition as a teenager, as most of us don't, right? And I enter my 20s, and I go to college for help, my undergrad, and I started pursuing, I pursued my master's degree for exercise science, fell in love with fitness, fell in love with health, was very, very passionate about it, but I wasn't super healthy. Late in my 20s, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, supraventricular tachycardia, mitral valve prolapse. So here I was on the outside looking pretty fit, had my fitness nailed, but there was that really missing part, which was nutrition. And even though I was doing nutrition right, I thought it was very much the food guide pyramid. Mm-hmm. It was very much 6 to 11 servings of carbohydrates, bread, rice, cereal, right? I was following it to the letter. And as my mom was getting older, and as I'm looking at my family history, my grandfather died of a heart attack in his 50s. My uncle died of a heart attack in his 50s. My other uncle has diabetes. And then my mom got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And I thought, you know what? I'm a ticking time bomb. If something doesn't change, what legacy, what path am I leaving for my kids? And so I just dove headlong into functional nutrition. I wanted to know everything about, okay, the food guide's not working for me. There's got to be more. And so, I started following different people and researching and reading, and I couldn't get enough. And as I did, and as I started removing some of those key things from my diet that cause inflammation, I noticed I started to feel better. I noticed that other people with Hashimoto's who were on this huge list of medications, I was able to, through diet and knowing how to exercise correctly for my body, I was able to stave off a lot of the medications other people that just didn't know what to do were on, or maybe they were far more progressed. The conventional medication absolutely has a place at times, and sometimes you just need it. I was fortunate enough to not have to, and I believe a lot of that was through diet and nutrition. And so I just started taking my clients along with me. I'm like, you know what? I'm learning this. You're coming along with me too. Later pursued my integrative women's health coach certification. I was already a personal trainer. And I just I created a membership called the I'm Worth It Fit Fam. We only open enrollment twice a year because I'm really, really invested in these ladies to help them understand what I call the 4 pillars of health. And there are many pillars, but for me, nutrition, exercise or movement, sleep, and hormones are absolutely foundational to everything, how we feel and how everything runs. And so we take a very streamlined, simplistic approach, but we go into each of these areas, helping them understand, okay, I can give you a meal plan, but what works for her may not work for her. So it's a template. So let's figure out, how do we need to manipulate this to work for you? I have workouts that I provide my members, but you know what? This particular workout may not be good for your body, or maybe it's not good for today. She didn't sleep last night. How do you know? So it's really about that intuitive eating, intuitive movement, and then understanding if you don't sleep, it's a house of cards. Everything is going to fall apart. So we dive into that. And then hormones. I think everybody over the age of 35 is pretty much a hormonal mess and doesn't know what to do about it. So I have a hormone expert on staff, and she goes deep with these ladies and helps them understand how to support. So that's my mission. That's why I'm here. I am so passionate about helping women understand you do not have to be the paperwork and the paper trail that's following your family. You actually do have a choice to change that. And it comes down to lifestyle, and it comes down to understanding we are playing the long game with your health.
That's great, Lisa. So many points that you made, and I'm jotting down little notes there. Create a better legacy, for your family, for your kids. That absolutely, we want that, and to help empower the women that you work with. That is key, because, like you said, so many people just feel like, well, this is the way it is, and I have this disease now, and this is the path I'm on. And I hear you saying that, acknowledging that fact that may be true, but there are many things that you do have control over, or that are within your power to change. So how wonderful for you to create this environment for women to come in and to have you support them. And more importantly, understand that they have it within them, once they understand the knowledge that they have this ability to heal. So I really fully believe in what you're doing. That's so wonderful. So personally, thinking about, those are some pretty big diagnoses for a young person to have: mitral valve prolapse and Hashimoto's thyroiditis in your late 20s. What kind of got you through? You said nutrition, but what changed, like, in not having that viewpoint that it's something being done to me, but that I actually can have some agency here?
Yeah, I think a real turning point was, my mom's diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. I had seen it further on in my family, and my mom had a very stressful life. She, my sister has Down syndrome. She's 14 years behind me. She came along when I was 14. So with my stepdad at the time. So my mom was raising this special needs child on her own, lots of stress. She smoked early on, so she didn't have the best lifestyle. But when she got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and my uncle had type 2 diabetes, and my other uncle died in his 50s, my grandfather died in his 50s, and I'm thinking, this is a cycle that somebody's got to break. Somebody has to break this cycle of poor lifestyle choices, because I can look at every one of them and point to where more than likely it came from. It wasn't just, I'm walking around incredibly healthy and boom, I died of a heart attack. There were all these steps that led up to that. And so that was just a really pivotal time in my life. And I think it almost took her diagnosis over mine to go, holy cow, I'm sitting in this little pool of diagnoses, and I can continue to sit in this and just work out really hard, or I can figure there's got to be more. And I was always a little on the fringe anyway, at least with, exercise. I was HIIT before HIIT was cool, right? I mean, I was that interval training, drop the heart rate, lift it back up before it was really even a thing. So I was always a little fringy. And I feel like, had my clients ahead of some of that curve, because I was so fascinated by how the human body reacted to not just the bell curve that I was taught, in my personal training and in my aerobics training and in my master's even. But so when I started looking at functional nutrition, it was such a hand in a glove. So I'm like, ooh, this is juicy. This isn't stuff you hear about all the time. Again, gluten-free before gluten-free was cool, and all of this stuff, because the science backed it up, because as I was experimenting, I was feeling better. So I had that, anecdotal proof for myself. And as I tried, just with my clients, let's do without sandwiches for a few days, just see how you feel. Just these little small changes, it just fueled me. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're scratching the surface here. This is really amazing. We're making tiny changes and feeling so much better. What could happen if we took this a step further? And it just sent me down this rabbit trail to land me where I am today.
That's great. Super that you took that initiative, and whomever brought it on, whether it was looking at your mom or within yourself, that you decided to make those changes. So thinking about a friend or a family member who maybe is not in the same mindset, how do you bring them along, or how do you open the door for them to understand that these things can change?
That is the $1 million question, Christine, because isn't it so hard to get to those that we love?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it sometimes easier and why is that? I mean, I talk about that a lot of times with my group. I'm like, what is it about me meeting a stranger, and there can be this huge effect, and then you take somebody who's really close to you and you're like, I'm talking to a wall. What is going right? So that's a great question, and I wish I had the perfect answer. That's something I'm still striving for, because some of those closest to me, it's hard. I can tell you this: what you can affect is how you are walking things out, how you are speaking of things, which is very non-judgmental, non-preachy. I don't want to push anything on anybody, but living out my lifestyle. And as people ask me questions, that's my open door. Or even, would you be interested in learning a little bit more about maybe that sandwich you just ate and why you feel like you have to fall asleep? Like I have a little bit that may back that up. If not, that's fine. I've tried every approach. Some works and some I'm still hitting a wall with, so I'm working on that. I'm very thankful within my home, and this is something I'd like to speak to, especially since my heart is for women, is a big problem that we have oftentimes is we're like, okay, I'm ready to get healthy. I'm on board. It's time. So I have my food and I have the family's food, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm cooking for me, and then I'm cooking for them.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's not a magic answer to that. Every family is different. But again, I like to help my clients understand that your home is your green zone. Once your kids step out of your house, the world is their oyster as far as Oreos and Doritos and all of the things. But in your home, if we can help to make somewhat of a green zone, and it doesn't mean it has to be a perfect pantry, but if we can minimize some of those things that we see them reaching for, just even some of those small changes, we're setting them up for success. Because it's really heartbreaking when the home isn't nutritionally a safe haven at all. They step outside, the world isn't a safe haven. And so there's no foundation. There's no, for these kids, they don't know where to go. So then they enter their college years, and we all know what happens with college, and you're living on pennies and you're just eating anything you can get your hands on. And then you enter marriage. Well, now you have this history of not the best eating. And so now maybe you're like, okay, now what do I do? But you've already built this up, and maybe you've started to pass that on to your kids. So as parents, we have this amazing opportunity to not just get healthy ourselves, but to start in small steps, making those changes in our home, helping our...
I completely agree with that, Lisa. You want to provide choices for your families in your house. And that's hard because in my household, it's not only my kids who are a little bit resistive to these changes, it's my husband. And I love my husband, but his viewpoint is they're kids. Let them eat that because they're kids. And I ate that, so why can't they? But I think there's a lot of difference even in the not so healthy foods these days than 30 years ago. There's more calories, I know calories aren't, calories in, calories out isn't true, but there's just more sugar, calories, hydrogenated oils than we had in our food. And
It's
if
true.
you eat that every day,
Absolutely.
so what should we say to people who are in our household who aren't on board with these changes?
Okay, so let's talk about husbands real quick, because that is really hard, right? I mean, this is our spouse, this is our other half, this is, this is and this can be a huge source of contention. Absolutely. So we can't force change, obviously. So where I often have women start, and we know our husbands, this may work for some, may not forever, but it for others, but it's a place to start, is going to them and understand and helping them understand, this is what I need to do for me. And for me, it would be so much easier if we could get on board with the whole family. If you could get on board with me, wow, would it make it easier for the kids? But here's what I want to ask you, honey. I cannot do this alone. My health is going down this path. I need you to be my advocate and my partner. Will you partner with me in this? So there's two responses women right now will have to that. One, they're laughing like, ha ha, you don't know my husband. That will not go anywhere, right? And if so, then we can move on to point B. But if not, here's the thing. Many men want to help a damsel in distress. So we have a way to say, hey, guess what, guys? We're making changes. This is what we're doing in the house. Everything's different. Everything's going in the trash. That's one approach that never usually lands very well and is always met with resistance. Or we can come and say, will you partner with me? Will you help me to do this? Some men need research. Some men are very skeptical. Some men, like you said, I grew up like this. I'm still walking around. I'm okay. What's the problem? So some may need a little bit, more, but that's a good place to start, is invite them to help you and let them know, those Oreos that you love in the cabinet, I love them more, and I absolutely cannot stay out of them. They're making me sick. They're making me bloated. They're making me feel bad about myself because I don't want to be maybe naked in front of you, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things we can help them understand. Would you help me maybe just take them to work? That would be huge. That would be huge just to maybe get them out of the house. That would help me. So I feel like that's a place to start that sometimes we miss, is just asking to partner. Now, if there's resistance there, we can only do what we can do. Our marriage is very important. And so if we have to, cook 2 meals for a while, that's okay. But sometimes we can slide things in they don't notice. And that's a place that I like to go as well, right? I'm not talking about cauliflower instead of rice. They're always going to notice that, although that's a great alternative. But there just are these subtle, small changes that sometimes we can make that we don't even have to announce. Maybe we're using coconut aminos instead of a soy-based sauce in our food, and it has this amazing flavor. And it's like, honey, that was delicious. And you don't even have to say, hey, guess what? You just ate healthy. It's just a way to infuse some health, right? So there's a lot of little tips and tactics that, we can always talk through. But I think that's just a really kind of cool way to start, is, will you partner with me? Will you help me to help myself, to help you, to help the kids?
I agree with that. And it's funny that you say that, because I teach an emotional regulation class to school age kids. And one of our activities is we pass a stuffed animal around. And the first time I have them, I actually have the kids throw the stuffed animal at their partner and ask them, how did that make you feel? And then the second time I have the person who wants a stuffed animal to have an open hand and to ask, may I please have that? Or, can you help me have that, with an open hand? And just, that's exactly what you're talking about. Being more inviting and being non-confrontational. And when you're confrontational with your words or with your action, that puts the other person in a state of fear or perceived fear. And then they shut down, they run away, they do whatever they do when they're afraid. So that really, I don't know, I had a light bulb moment there. So thank you.
That's an analogy. I love that. No, that's good. That's really good.
Yeah, and they love doing it. They have a kick out of
that. That's great. That is so good.
But anyway, so yeah, that's a really sticky situation, whether it is your partner or an older child. And you're right, we can't change anybody else, but we can definitely set up the environment to move forward and to make progress. And I do try to do some of those tricks or just offering what I have on my plate. We do have two separate meals. Hey, do you want to try this? And sometimes my kids say yes, and sometimes they don't.
Right. Small little changes like that. That's good. Well, and two, the verbiage sometimes is their food and my food. And what's funny is a lot of times my clients, when they start, our food is really good. It really is. We have a recipe database of hundreds of recipes plus meal plans. And so they start cooking and they're like, my kids are liking my food. I'm like, come on, guys, that's mine, right? Which is funny. But there is sometimes this mentality that, wait, that's mine. And so to be able to open that up and to be able to say, hey, this is my stash, but you are welcome to this stash, kind of going into it with that mentality, kind of keeps that verbiage even, because then the kids are like, that's mom's food, that's my food. No, this is everybody's food. You're welcome to. If not, you have your stuff, right? So even just sometimes the language that we use becomes their language and becomes their mindset. So we have to be cognizant of that as well, I believe.
You're absolutely right. The thoughts in your head are the words that come out of your mouth, and that's what the actions are. So 100%, those are some small changes. What we need for that to change is some awareness.
Absolutely.
So we need to slow down and kind of think a little bit, maybe not every time, but think about the words we're using. Wonderful. So what do we need to change about our healthcare system as a whole, or maybe just the food industry? It makes me angry reading books like from Michael Pollan or Dr. Hyman, and just reading about that this doesn't have to be this way. The food in our culture, in our world today, doesn't have to be presented to us this way. And yet, because of big business or profit or whatever, that's not going to change. And that makes me sad.
It makes me sad too. And what you just said right there, it's not going to change. We as advocates can get behind, missions and campaigns and different things and put our voice behind it. And we should. But it really comes down to, we are our own health advocate. And the more we understand, the better our health can be. Because when I am putting my health and my trust into the foods, the labels, that's what gets, you want to get on a topic that gets me fired up. It's the food labels on the front and how savvy they are. So the marketing is so savvy, low fat, low sugar, all of these things. And we're
natural.
Huh?
Natural.
All natural, all these things. And oh my gosh, you turn it around and you learn how to read what's on the back and your mind is blown. So that's kind of where my own passion is, you know what? I can only affect what's out there so much, but I can affect me in a huge way. I can affect those that I work with in a huge way by helping them to understand what to look for, how to ask the right questions, how to do maybe some of their own research and digging, and then those resources for that very thing. Because we're just overwhelmed. We go to the grocery store, we don't want to spend 45 minutes reading the back of labels, right? We don't want to go to our doctor and have a huge list like this that we have to ask. He's the expert, he should know these things. But we're not in that world. We cannot hand our health over completely to anybody. We have to be empowered enough to understand, to be able to read, to be able to educate, to know the right questions to ask when you're in the doctor's office. That's where we are. And that can feel utterly overwhelming. Absolutely. So it's a step at a time. It's an area at a time. It's one article at a time. But we as women, as men, as children growing up in this world, everybody really, our health is in our hands. And I can't be mad or at least blame some huge corporation. I can, but ultimately it's up to me to do my research and to affect my health. Because I could be mad all day long at this organization. It doesn't change anything. I can only change me.
Yes. That's very good. And that's what we need, people adopting that same mindset, that we're in control of us and we can't control anybody out there. And just even from a doctor or like a real healthcare profession, I feel like some healthcare companies are putting more out there as far as like, these are the ways to get your meditation, these are the ways for relaxation, these are the ways to improve your nutrition. But I really don't feel that they do a good enough job like reaching out like you do, or someone who's a health coach, and really working with people one-on-one. Definitely not in the doctor's office. And even myself, on an earlier episode, I talked about, I was asking the nurse practitioner for help and got nothing, got crickets. So then I'm like, well, then where do I go from here?
Right.
And so if you don't have a guide, finding a certified health coach, or, a physical therapist may have some additional training, somebody who you trust, and looking into Lisa's program and seeing what she has to offer, because it can be overwhelming. It can feel very, like it's too many things to think about, but professionals like yourself do simplify, do make it manageable. And you've already done that work for people. So that's so important, because you're absolutely right. There's so much out there. Who do I believe? Who do I trust? How do I get this information? So
right.
That's yay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fun.
What do you do now for your self-care? How do you take care of yourself?
So I'm on a new path to take care of myself. I would love to say, as an integrative women's health coach and somebody who's been working with women for 27 years, that I have this nailed. But to be brutally honest, I don't. To be brutally honest, I love my job so much, and I give so much to it, that I just had a surgery that I can talk to you about here in just a moment. But it honestly took me having to sit my butt down and do nothing to realize how much I was doing and how much I was giving, and how little self-care I had actually, that place that I got to, that it's really startling. I don't know how I was doing everything I was doing before. Your systems, your body can only do so much, and it can only put out so much before things do start breaking down. Your body is on a survival mode, right? And it's going to pull resources from what it needs to get from one step to another. That's where stress comes in, and then all the downfalls of stress that can lead to, chronic health conditions and cardiovascular disease. And some really healthy people are pushing it so hard that they may be risk for cardiovascular disease, And so to answer your question, right now, my quest is for my own self-care, is to take a step back, not from my company, not from my passions or my mission, but to take a step back from those non-essentials that do not need to be done. I am a type A, pedal to the metal all the time in every area of my life. But can you really be 100% in every area? You can't. It's not possible. So things do start to suffer. I homeschool my girls. I've got, my oldest is graduated, but I have my other two. They're pretty darn self-sufficient at their ages now. They're 13 and 16, but still they need me. They need that time. And putting that one day aside, that rest day, I'm just now starting to do that. And you know what? I can say shame on me, but I'm going to give myself grace. It's just not where I was. But now that is going to be a sacred day for me. So to answer your question, I would love to give you this huge list of all these wonderful things I do for myself all the time, but I've really, really neglected that. And so let me go ahead and you want to jump into my surgery for just a few minutes?
Yes. Before you do that, though, I want to applaud you for your courage to say that, because as a healthcare professional, or as somebody out there with a business about health and wellness, and here you may have felt that you couldn't say that. Like, I think that really, thank you, because that shows you're human and you have struggles too. And, we teach about the things that we need to learn about the most.
So true.
And
in that teaching, we can get so passionate about it that we're like, oh wait, I forgot about me, right?
Yes, yeah, for sure. So to take that time and now you're going to talk about why you were forced to sit and self-reflect. But I think luckily it was for something like that, and not for a heart attack that you had to stop.
Sure.
And rest. So yes, please share your journey and your story with that surgery and all of that.
Okay. So I want to keep it brief, but let me back up to about a year ago. I was one of my fellow health coaches, one of my colleagues. She was a physical therapist as well. And she was, we were on a Zoom call with some others, and she just happened to mention talking to a client about helping a client through her explant surgery. And I heard that word explant, and I thought, oh, I think I know what that is, but I don't want to know. I really don't want to know. It was a little head in the sand for a little while. I got breast implants 17 and a half years ago. So as someone with breast implants, hearing the word explant, I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to know much about that. Again, as a healthcare professional, that didn't last very long. The intrigues did start to get to me, but more than that, I am a Christian, and I do think that the Lord absolutely infused in me, you need to start looking at this, because a lot of what you're dealing with is more than likely related to this. So I did start to research early on this year. I came across an Instagram page, and she had these incredible before and afters, even just of people's faces before their explant journey and after. And some of them looked like they had aged backwards by 10 years. And that was just very interesting to me. Just started researching. And in the past year, my joint pain that I had been dealing with since my late 20s, which ironically didn't get diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis until about a year after I had my implants put in. Never even thought about connecting the dots. Same thing with supraventricular tachycardia. And that is a congenital heart abnormality, but I never had a problem with it. I never had one episode of it until I got my implants. Same thing with my mitral valve prolapse. So as I'm researching and I'm looking at some of what other women have gone through, I get to a point where I'm like, how can I not pursue this? There is a chance that as I do feel that my joint pain is ramping up a little bit, and I do feel like the chronic fatigue in the past 6 months in particular really started coming on more and more. How can I not look at this? So I went to my husband in February and I said, here we are, laid it all out for him. Didn't have to lay it out very far before he was like, let's do it. We need to do this. I mean, absolutely. I had to talk him into it in the first place. This was never something he necessarily wanted at all. So I started, okay, well, we're going to do this. Found my surgeon, who was on an approved list of many others who had been through this surgery. Really wanted to go with somebody who many others had gone through, because for this specific surgery, you don't just want to get the implant removed. You actually want the capsule around the implant removed. That's a different procedure, and it takes a different skill set, because sometimes it can be attached to the ribs, that capsule. It can be a mess in there. So you really need someone who knows how to do that and is very confident with it. And many plastic surgeons are not. So I went to a gentleman in Little Rock, Arkansas, Dr. Eric Wright, scheduled my appointment with him, had my explant procedure 2.5 weeks ago. So I'm still pretty new out. And just, got very public about it 2 months leading up to it. I teach local fitness classes. And I was going to tell my fitness classes and, of course, tell my friends, but I was really going to fly under the radar with this. I didn't want to be a spokesperson necessarily for this, but about 3 months ago, I just felt that nudge. You have a platform, use it. This can help other people. And so 2 months leading up to it, I started getting on my Instagram page, my Instagram stories, my Facebook page, telling people what was coming, telling people where I was, expecting all kinds of judgment, expecting all kinds of, oh, you're all natural, Susie, but you have breast, all these things. And I got nothing but support and love, and people reaching out to me going, oh my gosh, I've never even heard that word before. I've been sick since I've gotten mine, and maybe I need to pursue this. And that's all it took for me. I'm like, oh my goodness, the Lord is using this to move this message forward from my little old voice. And it just, boy, did it blow me up. I'm like, I have nothing to hide. Ask me anything type of thing, and just got more and more vocal about it, and have had countless messages about this very thing. And I always point people to other resources. I am not the end all be all. I do not know everything there is to know. My journey is certainly young compared to so many others. So I like to point them to those resources, and I'd like to give that to you to put in your show notes. Maybe when we're done, I can do
Absolutely.
that. Because there is a ton of information out there. So I'm always pointing people back to that. So I had my procedure 2.5 weeks ago. And within the first couple days, one of the first things I noticed, so for years since I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which was about a year or so after my implants, when I would sit for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and the longer I sat, the worse it was. But when I would get up to walk, my Achilles would feel like they were pinched together. They would just be balled up and tight. So I'd have to stand up, kind of, work it out a little bit, roll my feet around, and then I could walk. Well, a couple days after my surgery, of course, you're in a lot of pain, so you don't get up quickly anyway, but I stand up, and once I'm standing, I walk to the kitchen. And I turned around, and I just stood there for a minute, and I realized, it's bringing tears to my eyes just thinking about it. I just walked to the kitchen without having to stretch my Achilles. Like, what is that about? I'm turning 47 tomorrow. Like, right? I mean, this should be getting worse, not better, right? Oh my gosh, I had nothing else to look at. The 17 and a half years I've been dealing with that, and I walked to the kitchen. I still feel it. It's not perfect, but I no longer have to stand up and stretch before I walk from a seated position. That is life-changing. If nothing else changed, that's life-changing for me. So I'm very, very thankful. What I'm hoping will also change, again, I'm very new out of it. I'm getting pretty tired just from doing some running around, right? That's any surgery. Afterwards, you're just kind of spent when you do anything. So I'm really hoping that some of those chronic fatigue symptoms will go on. And I had some brain fog and some other things, but the joint pain was what had been racking me. And I always just linked it to my Hashimoto's, which more than likely it was, but that didn't surface till after I had my implant. So what's going to change now? What else will change? TBA, we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm excited to continue to heal.
Sounds like I'll need to have you on in a few months, Lisa, for an update.
I'd love that. I'd love
I know that we can't say with certainty, but do you think those implants were the trigger for your Hashimoto's?
I never would have thought so back then. After reading countless stories of women who were fine before their implants and then ended up with some form of autoimmunity, Hashimoto's being one of the most common, but there's a host of other ones, POTS being another one that's also very, very common. It's hard to believe not. It's hard to believe that it wasn't linked somehow.
Right.
And again, because that joint pain started early on with my diagnosis, and now I don't have that as much. I guess to answer your question, I can't defend it. I have no paperwork to show you that, yes, this was absolutely linked. In my heart of hearts, I do. I think that. And again, seeing some of those other symptoms that people with Hashimoto's deal with that I dealt with, to see if those drop off over time, I'll be even more convinced.
Absolutely. And just to backtrack, so with any sort of autoimmune condition, you have to have a genetic component for that first,
right?
But that alone will not put you into an autoimmune disease. You need to have that trigger. Right. And there's lots of different things that can be triggers, but here, just even just bringing awareness, like you said, to even just one other person who this might speak to, I think is so impactful. I know for myself, speaking about my pregnancy loss, I feel that same way, that it's not something that you necessarily want to advertise, but that you can perhaps just help one other person move along in the healing process. So again, thank you for sharing that very deeply personal story, but so important. And I hope that somebody out here listens and starts thinking about what that could mean for them.
Right. Absolutely. I do too. Thank you.
Well, Lisa, is there anything else you'd like to share with our guests or talk about today?
Just if anybody wants to connect, I am really vocal about not just this explant procedure, but pretty much everything. I do feel like there is this stigma in the fitness community to have this picture of looking great and perfect in every shot. And if you spend any time on my pages, you'll see that that's not something that I do. I posted a picture the other day. It looks like I'm 3 months pregnant and making a pregnancy announcement, but it was just all this fluid on me. And several years ago, I never would have posted that picture. I would have been like, are you kidding me? Heck no, I don't want anybody to see me like that, sucking in and, posing just the right way. I am so over that. Call it being older. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like there's a desperation for real, honest, vulnerable understanding that I don't care who touts themselves as an expert or a leader. Everybody struggles. Everybody has their issues. So, if you want to follow along, I do talk about explant some, but I have a whole lot of information as well with fitness and nutrition and that kind of thing, and kind of bring you along in my personal life, because if you follow me at all, you're going to understand more about my sister and a little bit about my family. So feel free to connect with me, Lisa Lou Fitness, on Facebook or Instagram, or my website, lisaloufitness.com.
Great. I'm going to do that right now. I'm excited to follow you, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate that.
That's not everybody can do that. Not everybody can put themselves out there like that. And I don't get the sense from you that you're doing that because I don't know, I want to be famous. I really get the sense that you're doing that because you have a real story. You are a real person and a successful person for sure, but that just empowering others to be able to find whatever that passion is within yourself, to share that with the world, and that we do have meaning and purpose in our lives and connections. We need connections between people. We don't live on islands. So thank you for that. Wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, you just saying purpose. We just got to camp out on that for just one moment. I did a video, it was the week before my explant, and it was a 2-minute video. It's on my Lisa Lou Fitness page and on my Instagram, but it's about purpose, and it's how to find your purpose, because so many of us don't think we have one, and we don't think we have a story to share. Everybody has a story to share. It doesn't have to even be tragic. It can be, but beauty can come from ashes, from anything. And when we open our mouths and when we share it, we can transform people's lives. It's very, very empowering, but we sit back and we're scared and we think that we don't have a voice. And so I just want to put an exclamation mark behind what you just said right there. We all have a voice. We all have a story, and whatever that is and whatever that looks like, when we allow ourselves to open up to it, it can transform those that we'll never even meet. So it's awesome.
I agree with that. And so just like before, I mentioned that awareness is what's going to help you move from that reflexive state into more of a functional moving forward state. In my opinion, it's belonging that's the bridge between just your wants and that passion and purpose. So to find a group of people who has shared values, who have similar goals for you, and getting involved with that group. And I think, Lisa, your page, your Instagram, your Facebook, all of that can serve as a platform to help somebody find a space of belonging, so that we can continue with that meaning and purpose. So yay.
Thank you, Christine. You're awesome. I so appreciate you having me on today. This was fun.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Please continue to recover. And I will have you on. I don't know when, maybe 6 months from now. I would love to hear how you have progressed through your self-care. I'm a really big believer in that being our foremost. But I think that will be a great shift in your life to get that.
That's good accountability for me. Thank you for that.
It's like May 4th. I have it down on my...
I have to have it all together. Got it.
Yeah. I have it on my calendar for another 6-month goal of mine, so I just wrote it down.
So funny.
All right, then. Well, you have a great day, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Christine. You have a good day, too. Bye-bye.